everybody, welcome back. So happy you can be here again. We are covering chapter 8 today, and it's about teaching grammar. Awesome topic, I know. I'm your instructor, Alleesha, and I'll be taking you through this today. So what I'd like to do, please turn to your chapter with me. We'll do this together. I'm going to summarize each point that I think is important and add some more information for clarification. So what I'd like to do, let's start by looking at the summary here. So we're going to go through each area, and the first section is number 1, titled Form-Focused Instruction. So what I would like you to do, please read through this information on your own. There are a lot of important keywords you want to highlight and really understand them. Things like lexis, phonology, discourse. These are important terms to understand for your own teaching experience. But when we talk about a form-focused instruction, what we're really meaning with a communicative language teaching approach is taking the meaning of the language and the form and teaching them together. They're no longer separated. So we're actually taking the target language of that specific lesson and we're bringing that language to use. So it's no longer separated. This really helps your learner integrate the language into maybe a dialogue, a role play, or a real life situation. So that's basically the form-focused instruction. Again, please read more about the keywords as they're very important and will help you with the task that you're going to find later on in after the chapter. So scroll down with me or flip your page over. We'll go to the second part of this chapter. It's titled The Place of Grammar. So let me find it here on my page. So the place of grammar with communicative language approach is a little bit different than what you might find in a traditional learning environment. With communicative language approach, we really like to incorporate grammar as it's happening, as the speaker is speaking, as you're communicating. It's all integrated in a way so that there's meaning and understanding and working through it as it's happening. You can do these corrections with me. What I would like to explain in this portion, you're going to see a triangle diagram in your chapter. Let's look at that together. It can be a little bit confusing, even for me. So let's look at it together. So you're going to see it here just above the next section. So the triangle here like this. You're going to have the grammar at the top, form and syntax. Then on the left side is the semantics or the word meanings. And then on the right side are pragmatics or the context. So just think when you're teaching grammar, not just teaching grammar, but bringing all of this triangle into the teaching of your grammar. But remember, it's not just, here's the grammar, let's teach it. As the communication is happening naturally and the meaning is happening naturally bring in the grammar in a nice, gentle way so that your learner has that meaning and form together. What I do really want to stress though, and again for the task, understand the difference between form and syntax, understand semantics, and understand pragmatics. Let's move on to the next section, which is called Issues About Teaching Grammar and Other Language Systems. So there are primarily 2 different ways that you can do this. One is called inductively, and the second one is called inductively. So let me just scroll down. I've got some notes here. So basically, inductively is just using the target language in a way that's eliciting the language. What that means is you're not telling your students the answer. You're asking questions, maybe even like a head turn. Try to get your learner to say the target language without you telling them. This is very helpful for learning. They do a lot of inductive education with children. Because the learning process is there, it's very helpful for the learner at this stage. Now, once you've got the inductive portion and you understand that, then you can take it into what we would call deductive. So let me just scroll down here. And what that is it's still through elicitation, but it's taking the target language and its form, and it's making it more structured. It's giving it that more grammar structure for your learners. The second part here is, there's a good question I would like to address. It's, should we use grammatical technical terms in a communicative language teaching classroom, or CLT? You'll see it often. In my experience, yes and no. I want you to listen again to your learner, engage their proficiency levels as we saw in chapter 3, and really understand where they're at. Do you think a bigger word is going to be difficult or not? Gauge them, interact with them through that way. I do want to stress the importance here of this approach. So there are a couple things I'm just going to quickly go over. We have under this section called truth. Make sure that things you're talking about are based on real life situations. This is going to help your learner better understand the real world and understand how that grammar works with them going out with their friends or them going to a movie. The next one is teaching boundaries. Make sure that there are boundaries within your teaching. Make sure there are limitations so your learner can understand this. The next one is clarity. This again goes with your proficiency level. Don't use too big of words if you have a beginner or intermediate learner. They may not understand that word, and it may take a long time to clarify the grammar and understanding behind it. Try a more simple approach or simple word. The next one is familiarity. What I find is really helpful is taking popular culture or things that your learners understand, maybe culturally, and using that grammar or sentences into something they understand, familiar, and very helpful. And then the last one is relevance. So make sure that with your target language and your grammar, make sure it's relevant and make sure the dialogue, your communication is relevant to the language. So if you're talking about a park and trees and a bench, you don't want to have a dialogue about a movie theater. It just doesn't work. So let's move on to the next section. This is number 4. It's, should teachers correct grammatical errors? Now, in my experience, some learners actually want you to. So if they want you to, correct them. Do it. Do what they feel is comfortable. But what I find is most comfortable is allow them to speak, allow them to get the meaning out, maybe take down notes, and then after the communication, after the learning, share together. Show them different things, and again I stress, elicit, elicitation. Get them to find their own error. Get them to find their own mistake. And that's very helpful. The next section, please scroll down in your chapter. It's called the Presentation Practice Production Framework, or PPP framework. And I will just paraphrase and go over this quickly with you guys. I made some notes that are important that we should talk about. So again, this is just going through things, inductive versus deductive teaching, board work with language, eliciting target language, using natural speech for pronunciation, maybe after presentation, using clarification of the target language, things like that. Then we have our last section, the structure of PPP. And with the structure, you're going to see this in your task. It's basically just how you're flowing your lesson plan and how you're flowing the class. Things like a lead-in, context, pronunciation, form, controlled or less controlled, fluency, practice. You can do this a couple different ways through writing or role plays. What we will continue with is we're going to talk about the structure of PPP because this is very important for your task and it will help guide you in your future lessons. So let's go to number 5 on your outline called the structure of PPP. So the beginning of the structure is called the lead-in. And the lead-in is kind of a build-up. It's using the target language. In most cases, it's kind of maybe introducing a story of somebody or a background, a situation, using visual prompts, asking questions to elicit your learners. Basically just a lead-in, building up a story or something with target language. The second part of the structure of PPP, is the context. So after the story, we want to set a context of what's happening. Usually we can do this by drawing. We can do this with different prompts or questions, different kinds of cues. I always find it helpful to draw pictures on the board, write words on the board. It's very helpful for our learners. I also like to ask our learners questions. So again, stress, elicitation. So is the story in the past or the present? Is the exact time important or not important? Or what is important in the story and why? This third step of the structure of PPT is pronunciation. So what I really like to do is I like to go through what I've drawn on the board, words, expressions, and I will help my learners elicit the proper pronunciation of different target language within the structure of our story. I find this very important. After that, we go on to what we call form. And form is just eliciting the breakdown of the target language in its original form. So I'm actually going to go through the example you see in your chapter. So we have a sentence. It's called Bill has gone scuba diving. So what I like to do is write this sentence on the board based on subject, verb, and object. And we write it in separate forms, and we help, again, through pronunciation, and help the student understand the form and grammatical structure of that sentence and language using target language. The next step is what we call controlled or less controlled practice. What I really like to do and what I find is very helpful is using the target language, getting your students to use it in groups or pairs. And this really helps them speak to each other, using the language in different situations or scenarios, or even just adding on to the story that you did in the lead-in. Maybe having each other ask different questions about what's happening in that story, understanding the context, getting to think critically about the language that you're teaching them. The next step is 2 parts. It's fluency practice. We've got 1 and we've got 2. So the first one I find very helpful is a writing exercise. So set up a writing exercise based on your lead-in, so keep it the same. Don't change anything. We don't want to confuse. But have them introduce and apply maybe something in a written form around the target language and implementing target language through writing. The next part is practice 2, still in fluency. This is my favorite part. I found it most helpful in all of my lessons, which is the role play. So the role play is still similar to pair work, but now you're getting to act and getting to pretend and be in that real life situation with your friends or at the movies or family, and you're really getting your students a chance to interact with that target language and getting them a strong grasp of how to use it in an everyday setting. It's a really great way to get your students to learn this. Now what I'd like you to do, go to the next part of the chapter. It's called PPP, Sample Lesson Plan. You're going to see this exact lesson plan, not the same lesson plan, but you're going to see this lesson plan on your task. So please review everything on this lesson plan. I'm going to briefly go through it with you right now. So again, we're going to go back to number 5. What's the first one? It's the lead-in. So the lead-in is, what did you do as a child that you don't do now? So that's where you explain, you use your pictures, you can draw on the board. It gives you examples here. That's your presentation. Then from there, what you're going to do is also introduce the context. So different context. Did I do it a lot? Yes or no? Was it a habit? Yes or no? Do I do it now? Yes or no? Then from there, what I like to do is, once they understand that target language, this is where pronunciation comes in. So practice that pronunciation with them. Make sure that they're understanding how to say the word correctly and that the meaning is there. That's the most important thing. From there, we're going to go to form. So scroll down, you'll see form. Write it. Don't write a sentence like this. Separate subject, verb, and action. Separate it and help them understand the form with the grammar and the target language. Then, from there, it's really up to you. Use your controlled and less controlled practice through paired work. So in this example, we're using maybe a gap-filled grammar sheet or a card game. Something fun, something they can use to interact with. Then in the last part of the fluency practice, again, have them reproduce the target language through writing exercises or role plays. So we can see here in the production stage, they're doing a childhood survey, which will help maybe drill in the concepts we taught them in the presentation phase, or the lead-in, the context, and the pronunciation. Okay, so please take a look at all of that. As well, take a look at your lesson plan materials, what you need to use. Really study this, answer the fluency practice questions, implement all of this into your lesson, and it'll be very helpful for you. So please study all of this, and I look forward to talking to you about the task. Hi, welcome back. We are at chapter 8, and we're going to talk about the task. Today we're doing task 6, again, teaching grammar. So please get your task out. Let's follow together, and we'll go through it step by step. So you're going to see a lesson plan like this. The first part of the lesson plan is for you. This is kind of the goals, the objectives, and the aims you want to accomplish in your lesson with your learners. So if we look at it here, we can see this is the information, okay, the instruction, name, all of this information here. As we scroll down, we're going to see lesson aims. So this is kind of what the lesson is about, what you're trying to get your learners to understand. You're also going to have some certain assumptions, so it's important to put those down too, because we all have assumptions about things. The next part is anticipated problems. So we kind of want to know Is there going to be a problem? If so, how can we solve that problem? So you'll see that here. This is again for you. You're doing this assessment. Then the next part of your planning is the materials. So if we're going to be doing a role play activity, what materials do we need? Do we need materials at all? Maybe so. Maybe we're going to be at a library, so maybe we're going to be like, we're reading a book, so you need the materials. Once you do this stage, then we get into the actual lesson plan. So if you have to flip the page or scroll with me on the computer, let's go down to the actual lesson. So very, very important. I find many of my students, especially in the morning, they might be super tired and not there to learn. So you want to really just do a warm-up with them, and this is just getting them energized, engaged, and ready for learning. After that, we're going back into PPP and the structure. Introduce your lead-in. So you've got your lead-in here. So do your lead-in. Again, do your presentation. So the context, pronunciation, and form. Very important. So here we can see this has been created based on the teachers writing the categories. Once all of that is done, and once people understand what you're talking about through the different things we talked about earlier, continue down, continue down. This is just the lesson plan. Then it comes to the practice. So this is where you're going to do, again, the writing exercises, the fluency practice, role plays, different things like that. So that's where they're really going to get the practice. So here's an example maybe of a writing activity that you could do, filling in the gaps, making sure they understand the target language. Or you could do feedback. Again, there's another portion of production where they're also filling in different categories. We want to make sure, again, they know the target language. So scroll down. There's many different things you can do. Just really take a look at this. Take a look at the one in your chapter. And if you have any questions about it, I'm here. You can help me. And that's it. And when you're finished doing this, please submit it to me by email. Answer questions with me. You can also send it on your account. Thank you very much.